Have you ever heard of spintronics? It's a new way for electronic devices to process and store information, promising to be faster, cheaper, and more energy efficient than the electronics we use today, which is good considering that modern electronics might be coming to an end. You see, every year or two, the number of electronic components that you can fit on a chip doubles. This is called Moore's Law, and it's this shrinking that has propelled electronic innovation for the last 50 years. But in order to keep this up over the next 10 to 20 years, we'd have to make our components so tiny that they stop acting like we expect them to. Well, that's not good. That's the end of Moore's Law. But does that spell the end of electronic innovation? Not quite. You see, modern electronics work by measuring the net charge of groups of electrons. Electrons are the tiny negatively charged particles that hang out outside the atom's nuclei. But electrons have another cool property called spin. But spin isn't like spinning a top, it's more like the faces of a coin. You see, when you flip a coin, you'll get either heads or tails, right? There's nothing in between. Similarly, if I measure the spin of the electron, I'm either going to get spin up, +1, or spin down, -1. There's nothing in between. So new plan. Instead of measuring the net charge of a group of electrons, let's measure the net spin. Now, most of the materials we're interested in don't have a net spin by default, but we can use a finely tuned laser pulse in many of our materials to prepare or excite a net spin. Similarly, if there's already a net spin in our material, we can measure it out with a second, slightly different laser pulse. But even if we start exciting these spins, they don't stay that way forever. You see, there are factors at play in our materials that try to destroy net spin. It'd be like if I wanted to leave you some information by flipping a bunch of coins and leaving them on the table for you. But while we weren't looking, the coins started flipping themselves. Even if we started out with all heads on the table, like you see on my slide here, after enough random flips, we'd end up with half and half. We would lose that information. What I do in my lab is try to understand exactly how these mechanisms work and what we can do to try to combat them. So I excite a net spin, and then I measure it out. I excite a net spin, and then I wait a little bit before measuring it. I excite a net spin, wait even longer. And by waiting, I'm talking trillions of seconds here, so pretty short. But this way, I can map out how the net spin in my material changes as a function of time. In this way, by changing different material parameters like structure, chemical composition, applied electric field, applied magnetic field, temperature, we can understand how these properties affect the net spin. In this way, I hope to identify the combination of properties that will lead to a long-lived net spin and provide a basis for the next generation of spin-based electronics. Because as far as I'm concerned, even if Moore's Law has to come to an end, innovation doesn't have to. Thank you.